white, black, brown, yellow, purple, orange, navy, green, blue, red. We all differentiate each other in this crazy world with the color of our skin and our cultures, right? Well, not really. Big part of it is what race do we come from? The race. Now, how this word even came about? What is the origin of this word and why it was discovered at the first place? Now, this is a fairly new word, and you will be surprised how new it is. I mean, there were caste groups in India and divisions between religious groups like Shia Sunnis in Islam, Catholic and Evangelists, and so on in Christianity and in Judaism. There's Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and Mizrahi. But these were subgroups in different ethnic groups, which still is very dividing. And the caste group in India is another beast in itself, which can be a whole another essay. But for term race, it is generalizing group of people from different continents and regions around the world, and why there was even a need to do that, to come up with this term. Race is still a big determining factor in the building of society and our social structure. If you go on any social media platform nowadays, you can see the discrimination towards every single race that exists on earth. Some faceless and some in the absurd amount. We humans are such stupid animals that whenever there is one race being targeted in the world, with all the wild shit and negativity, we tend to forget what race we were targeting before the current top of the chart race. For example, East Asians used to be talk of the day back in 2016 to 2021. And once COVID settled and everybody went on their business, all the attention moved towards South Asians. If we are looking into the history to find out what race is and its origin, there will be a lot of different answers. So let's stick with what I could find in my own research, as I will be making this essay short and to the point. The term race was introduced by a German scientist named Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. So no surprises there that it originated in the Germanic region. And he divided the races into 5 different categories, which were Caucasian, Mongolian, Malayan, Ethiopian, and American. American and English people found this to be delightful for themselves, as now they can make a distinction within human beings using the color of their skin, and they made sure at that time white or fair skin color is superior, and the more complexion there is on the skin, so more melanin, it would be inferior. So anybody with a dark skin would be at the bottom, which then gave the idea of enslavement, where quote-unquote superior races cannot be slaves, but inferior races can be. Again, very similar inspiration as the caste system in India, but in a totally different sense. Let me give you a mind-blowing example. In 1929, if you were of Mexican descent living in US, you were considered a person with a superior race, a white person technically. But then in just a single year in 1930, you were considered inferior and a minority, and it was due to the intention of eliminating the immigration. Now this sounds very similar to current affairs around the Western world. This was the first and only time when US Census Bureau created a racial category with Mexican term for people from Mexico. It did not even exist before, hence they were counted as the Americans equal to the Caucasians. And of course, this was not the case for the people with African descent at the time. Now again in 1942, when US needed the labor force to keep up with the economy, GDP, and inflation due to World War II, then they made Mexicans into the white category as equals, so that the immigration can be ramped up and more people into labor force can be brought in the country from Mexico. This is a great example of how race is more like a propaganda or a term used to get benefits, so it can be molded in any sense when it sees fit, and to each their own. It is still happening today, and of course, in a more sophisticated manner. In the year 2000, US government added multiracial category to bring more and more people into the country and make them all a visible minority. I'm sure you have already seen that while you were filling the job applications. Until the 18th century, it was not the word race which was used as a term to describe different ethnic groups, but more like these kinds, these types, or these sorts of people. And as you may already know, these were being used by Caucasian people towards all the other ethnic groups around the world. The reason it was prominent in the 18th century because it started being used in English colonies as the Caucasian people would describe themselves as free people, so only they can be free people. So according to them, the term race did not apply to them. The first people that the English tried to enslave and place on plantations were the Irish, with whom they had hostile relations since the 13th century. Some Englishmen had proposed laws enslaving the poor in England and in the colonies to force them to work indefinitely as well. And also, most of the slaves on English plantations in Barbados and Jamaica were Irish and Indians. There is no DNA that specified race, so the idea itself of race is just stupid. And as humans are stupid animals, generally, we followed this idea and went along with it. Race just does not exist. It is just a recent man made term then used by certain individuals to influence their power over the ethnic groups dominantly. Even in one of the most ancient civilizations like Greek civilization, it was common to consider factors like climate and geography that they played a role in someone's appearance and how they look. So there was no discrimination based on just the appearance itself, and even in those times, which tells a lot about our modern times when it is the total opposite, even in 2026. You can find the evidence of this with the written work of Hippocrates, who was the physician and philosopher in Greek culture. He noted that temperate climates created people who were sluggish and not built for labor, while extreme climates led to people who were sharp, industrious, and vigilant. He also noted that people of mountainous, rugged, elevated, and well watered countries displayed enterprising and warlike characteristics, while people of level, windy, and well watered countries were unmanly and gentle. What is so striking about the American experience in creating such an extreme conception of human differences, especially during the enslavement of the African people, and normalizing the slavery using the absurd pseudoscience and creating facts of their own without any real backing to them? It was the role played by scientists and scholars in legitimizing the folk ideas. Scholarly writers began attempting to prove scientifically that, quote unquote, the Negro was a different and lower kind of human being. The first published materials arguing from a scientific perspective that, quote unquote, Negroes were a separate species from white men appeared in the last decade of the 18th century. They argued that Negroes were either a product of degeneration from that first creation or descendants of a separate creation altogether. Now, this sounds fucking crazy to me. More than any other, the violence of Nazi rule, the Holocaust, and World War II transformed the whole discussion of race. Nazism made an argument for racial superiority based on a biological basis. And this led to the idea that people could be divided into many groups, and based on those groups and divisions, there would be severe, torturous, and often fatal consequences. We all should understand that race has no intrinsic relationship to human biological diversity, that such diversity is a natural product of primarily evolutionary forces, while quote unquote race is just a social invention by some fucked up people who wanted to use this idea to benefit themselves by considering lives of millions of people worthless to them.